Good evening, welcome to Fishing Squad. So we're at the start of lockdown 3. I don't know if we're going to be allowed to go fishing or not, hopefully we'll find out in a couple of hours. I was just thinking about what we could do while we're in lockdown. I'm dying to put this video on about how to make a set of mackerel feathers out of an empty packet of peanuts. You'd be amazed. And they're better quality than anything that you can buy in shop. Sometimes when you buy mackerel feathers from the shop, some of them are just cheap and nasty. There's certain makes where you cast them out and all the silver comes off them. There's also some really good makes you can get where they're really good quality and you'll be able to catch loads of fish on them. But I've bought some really cheap ones previously, and literally all the silver attractor that's on the hooks has come off when I've cast out after about 3 casts. They look really good on the shelf, which really frustrated me. I tend to find that the more silver they have on them, the more mackerel you catch. The more sort of like darker colours, the more pollock you catch. Years ago I used to fish with just standard, like literally feather. I used to catch loads of mackerel on them, as well as pollock, but as years have gone on, the particular place where we fish, the mackerel have thinned out. It's noticeably thinned out over a period of 30 years. They don't turn up as early as they used to. They don't stay for as long into the autumn stroke winter as they used to. And they can be difficult to catch sometimes. I've noticed that basically you seem to catch more on this than what you do on like a darker colour, like a feather, or what else could be a good example? Well, so basically anything that's dark and doesn't have that shininess on it. Even spinner wise, the darker spinners seem to pick up the better pollock rather than mackerel. I think there must be something. It must be preference. I think what it is on clear sunny days when the water's obviously crystal clear anyway, the sun shines down into the water and it'll reflect on that, and the mackerel obviously see it moving through the water, looks like a fish, and they smash it. But like I say, over the years the mackerel thinned down, and I can only gauge it on a particular spot that I fish. But I seem to catch more on these days than anything else. I've even fished at the side of someone who's had like the plain feathers on, and I've had these on. They were late autumn, and I were catching on these, and they weren't catching anything. So that proves in itself. On this particular day that I'm referring to, the water wasn't even that clear. So that obviously there's something in it. For me, these anyway. So I advise anyone that fishes with mackerel feathers, or mackerel lures, whatever you want to call them, always go for silver colours. Right, we're going to start assembling our homemade mackerel feathers. So I've got, first place to start is you want some strong line. Talking, it wants to be a minimum of £50 line. Minimum. On some videos when they show you doing this, they use 30. Don't use 30. If you get a good day and you're catching 3 fish at a time, 4 fish at a time, depending on how the hooks you've got on, £30 line, it'll get battered to bits, and that trace will be no good at the end of that session. You best have to chuck it in then, because well, if it lasts a full session anyway, because consistently a £30 rig body. For these, reeling three mackerel in constantly, you're going to be putting it through a lot of strain, and eventually it's just going to weaken. So £50 line minimum, especially if you're using a 3-ounce lead or 4-ounce lead, you want £50 line minimum. And same way if you're using them off a boat, right, £50 line minimum. Right, so I'm just going to show you the first one. I'm going to show you the first one, then we'll fast forward it a bit, and I'll show you how I assemble a trace. So I've cut myself 3 lengths of £50 sea line at 1.5 foot. And I've got myself, I'm going to use 5/0s for this one, and you can catch mackerel on a 5/0. Catch them off at boat all the time on 5/0s and bigger. So I'm going to cut myself some of this it's fruit and nut packaging. It's best off using something like a material like this. You can use anything though. Don't be thinking, oh, I've got to use it inside of a crisp packet. Crisp packets are a bit flimsy. They don't last as long. Whereas like a peanut packet's quite thick. But we're after that shininess, basically. So I've just guessed the size. I haven't even measured up to the hook. But if you put your hook up, hold your hook up, then you'll see what it sits like. You could also, when you've wrapped them on, you can do like a final. I'll show you anyway in a minute. Basically, I'm just gauging. You want it to hang over your hook like that, basically. You see the hook? Right. So what I'm going to do now, let's put that down. Get the hook, get your hook. And this is where, when you start learning stuff about fishing, the full sort of spectrum of fishing, you learn all sorts of knots. So we're going to be doing a bit of an knotless knot from carp fishing. We're doing, hey. So we're going to fold us peanut wrapper packaging around there. Just pinch it onto your hook just above the eye. And we're going to do a little bit of a knotless knot from carp fishing to trap it in place. Now this is literally this is the first time, I'm going to be honest, this is the first time I've made them like this. You can use all sorts of stuff. You can even use washing line. Washing line with like a wiry core can be very good. If you look on YouTube, you'll find some other videos like that. But you trap it in place with your knotless knot. Good old knotless knot, eh? So we've got our tag end there. You trim that down. Honestly, you've got to say, with this dark blue, well, it's like a dark blue line. Look at that. I think a cod would smash that to bits. So I'm going to tie another 3 of these up, and I'll show you how to assemble the rest of the rig, but it's as simple as that. So I'll tie another 3 up, and then we'll assemble it. Right, I've tied 3 up of them with a knotless knot, trimmed off my tag end, pulled it secure. I did start off with 1.5 foot a line for each snood, because obviously you have to allow a tolerance to make your knotless knot. And I've trapped my fruit and nut packet trimming to my hook securely in place. As you can see, I've also like split the back of it to make it a bit more, so it moves about more in water basically. Then I've got my main rig body. It's probably just slightly over 3 foot, but it just depends what your preference is. I don't like having too long a rig body. I don't like having long hook snoods. Some people like long on both. I've bought rigs before that have had long on both. I just didn't get on with them. Find them more difficult to cast. I don't see them as streamlined when you're casting them. So anyway, we need to make 3 knots like that one. It's just a loop of a knot, I suppose. I'll show you how to do it now anyway. These are going to form like a guide for where your hook snoods are going to sit on your rig. So you need to just make a loop, go through it once, go through it twice, and then pull it down. So, simple, but I want it in a particular position, that's why I'm... Alright. So as you can see, that's a good example of one there. If you look, you'll see there's like a loop where line's gone through. You need to pass your hook snood through that, back round the back, and back through the other one on the other side, and then tie a knot. Now I'm going to start with the middle one. And the reason why I'm starting with the middle one, it's easier probably to tie a rig with 3 hooks on. I'm starting with the middle one so I can then gauge how long the other 2 snoods need to be. And if they're too long, I can then trim them down. If you start at the top, you might get in a mess if they're too long. So I'm going to now feed it through this loop on one side of it. Go through. pass it through one, around the back. These are just going to trap your knot basically. You're going to tie on the end of your hook snood. So I'm not a fan of having a really long snood. You've got to bear in mind you're going to be casting these out quite a lot. So I'm just going to tie my favourite knot. If you look back on my knot video, on one of my earlier videos, you'll know what my favourite knot is. But any simple knot will do. Any simple fishing knot. Pull it down, moisten, always moisten your knots. Give it a really good pull. So I've done that one. I'm going to do my other one. Again, if you look, you can just literally feed it through one side and then back through the other side. And that bit of a loop you've tied in the line, it's just a guide basically to tie your snood onto. I only learnt this today. I'm quite impressed, to be honest with you. There's another way of doing it. You could tie 3 loops down your line, but I don't know whether I think they seem to sit better on rig. I'll show you that in a minute the other way. You can do it. I'll tell you what, just because it's a video and we're doing a demonstration, on the top one I'll show you the other way that you could do it potentially. Oh. So I've done that. I'll trim them down. I'll trim these two down. Trim my tag ends off now. I mean, if you can make these out of old line, you know. If it's strong old line, this is strong old line what I've got. So it might be a little bit kinky where knots are, but it's good. I'm well impressed. Look, the sea. Looks like a shot boat out of the sea. But the other thing you can do, rather than do that thing that I've just done, where you feed it through the back of the loop. I don't know if you can see that clearly. That's basically all you need to do to like make a guide for your snood to sit on. But you don't have to do it like that. If it's too complicated for you, you don't feel comfortable doing it like that. You can just tie a loop, you know, like the one you'd tie on a carp hair rig. But I'd go through 3 times rather than 2. Could tie quite small ones of these if you wanted to, or whatever you find's best. It's probably just a bit neater if you do a small one. But you can tie a loop. This is how I used to do it, but tonight I've learned that way of doing it. That's how they're doing it sharp, and that's the first time I've known that in 30 years. So just goes to prove you're always learning. We're always learning as fishermen. I'm going to keep these. Keep these until our next go sea fishing, which could be September 2025. And we'll see if we can catch a fish on them. We're hoping to get a kayak this year, but we'll have to see what happens with this lockdown business. These would be perfect to use off the kayak. Yeah, so tie that onto your loop, like that, and then just trim your tag end off. The thing is about using strong line as well, there's a lot of knots in it. There's a lot of knots in this rig. And if you use £30 line that some people are saying you should use, I mean, for a first attempt, I'm quite happy with that. I think they're pretty good. Then what I'd do is, let's see what I've got in my pot here. I would on the top, which one I'm going to say it's the top, use that as well. And there's the top one, I put a swivel, or you can tie a loop. I like a swivel personally. Because if you get 3 mackerel on and then they're spinning a bit, just less strain, less chance of your line twisting and undoing a knot. Trim tag end off. Then on bottom one, I ain't got one to hand. I mean, if I had one to hand, I'd be using it. I'd be using that crane interlock swivel that I bang on about. That I use it on most of my fishing rigs. But this is just for your weight. You can either use a simple split ring, or I like to use a snap. I've got just a standard snap swivel here. So trim your tag end off. So I mean, quite happy with that. Really am. It'll catch fish, and the price of it really. It's cheaper than £1 to make that, a lot cheaper than £1. And you know it's going to last. That would be perfect to fish off a boat with size of them hooks. Put a bit of mackerel on for extra attractant. It'd be perfect for catching pollock and cod and coral fish. So, oh, one other thing. You can either, with these knots, you can either leave them as they are, or you could get some of your missus's nail varnish. Paint your nails, no, I'm joking. Paint your knots. Paint your knots. You can get various colours of nail varnish, depending on what colour line you're using. I'd put a couple of coats on. If you're not confident in your... Well, I'm always confident in my knots. You can put a bit of super glue on these knots as well. It might help hold your peanut packet on a little bit better as well. But there's other things you can use. I've seen people use like waterproofs, fluorescent waterproofs, cut them up. If you can get some old fluorescent waterproofs, you know, like old, what people wear on boats, and like Ivy's vest, that's a good one. An Ivy's vest is absolutely perfect. You know the reflectiveness on the Ivy's vest? It's perfect for making mackerel feathers. It's also good to stick onto your rod as a fluorescent tip ring. Rod tip, I mean. So I mean, you can put a bit. That just adds a bit more colour to it. If you put enough on, should make a decent quality job as well. Yeah. So like, you know, this, that material, it'd be perfect. It's got that shininess to it, but it's got the glitter in it that when the sun shines down to the water, like with these, you'll get that reflectiveness, and it works brilliantly for mackerel, that type of thing. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video anyway. I've enjoyed it. It's been a bit of a learning curve for me, and you know, all videos I put on are just natural. I'm not trying to tell people what to do or like that. I want to learn things. I want people to see it in practice. So I've learnt that knot today. That knot, it were like just a simple like loop knot. Round it twice, and it acts as a guide to put my snoods onto, and they hang quite well. They hang really well. Really impressed with it. They hang a lot better. If you look, I'm just straining that up a bit. If you look, they seem to hang better than the loop knot. Look, the loop knot seems a bit lost. They seem to. I just think they're better. So I've learnt something new tonight. I hope you have as well. Thanks very much, everybody, and I'll see you soon.